Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see you there. Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see. Ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see you there. Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a beautiful, sunny, cold day in Maryland. Yeah, I never imagined when growing up in Dominica, the sun would be out, but it would be very cold. But that's the kind of day we have here in Maryland. But there's always some warmth and sunshine and somewhere. And today I'm very happy. I'm very happy to be here and in planning the St. Andrews Grand Reunion 2025, July 6th through July 12th. And we are looking forward to that. Good time. St. Andrews has played a very important part in the lives of the people of the Northeast, especially from the Kalinago territory to Kalibishi. And it's to many, or it was a godsend. And for many of us who went through the doors of St. Andrews High School, it's cherished time with some of the most enjoyable times of our lives that we'll never exchange for anything. And so the school has closed in 2006. Well, it was not a long, it didn't last a long time, but the impact it had on the lives of many of us is priceless. So that's why we are planning to have that grand reunion and to meet up and see some of the people that we have never seen in a long time. I've said I left high school over 30 years ago, and I have not seen some of my classmates in all that time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reuniting and coming back together, meeting, having fun, helping the communities around that especially those in the catchment area of St. Andrews. And today I have here a man who needs no introduction in Dominica. He's well known in Dominica, and I'm sure many places around the world. So we are very blessed to have Dr. Lennox Honeychurch right there in our area in the Northeast. And he is always so receptive to things like that. I remember going way back when I was a little boy. I remember Lennox coming to Wesley with this little projector. And I used to look forward to that. And when I checked, when I used to see him as much like a big man, but when I'm looking back and I said, wait a while, he was quite young. He was quite young when he was doing this thing. I mean, it's just amazing the passion he had for so long, and he just keeps going. He just keeps going, and so we are very happy to have Dr. Lennox Honeychurch here with us. And I recently got to find out that he was one of the first set of teachers at the St. Andrews High School. So I said, you know what? Let me try to get him on here and talk to him, and I'm sure we're gonna learn something and about St. Andrews, and because he is a guy that documents and keep records of things a lot of people don't really overlook. So without further, I will ask Dr. Honeychurch. Dr. Honeychurch, what, or maybe how, I don't know how to put, but what gave you that passion? Where did that come from? So start off with in the just history and archaeology and all this. How did that start?
Well, actually, it was through my grandmother, Mrs. Napier, who actually was at one time the parliamentary representative for the whole of the Northeast. Of course, she used to live at Calabishi. I was born in Portsmouth. So I used to be with her in Calabishi quite often. So starting from there, I was always, as we were growing up, going different places. She would be telling me about what that place was long ago and all her own experiences in the Northeast. And the fact I always grew up with was that she was one of the prime movers to get a road across the island, motorable road, because up until 1957, there was no motorable road the road got as far as Concord. You could almost say Hatton Garden. And then it didn't connect again until you got to Pont-Cassé. So all of that was forest. And of course, there was also plans to build an airport, but you could not build the airport until you had a road to the capital. All of this had to wait. And of course, although there were plans from the early 1940s, there was the World War from 1940 to 1945. And basically, the British were involved with the war and they couldn't spare any money. Things were very tight in Dominica. So it was only after the war that they could begin to do the road. And even then they had problems. So I was growing up with all these things because I remember as a child, when we had to go to Roseau, we'd have to leave early and go to Portsmouth, Borough Square, get on a launch and chug to Roseau, 3 hours, stopping in Collyho and Bartley and these places. And then eventually you get to Roseau. So my memory of all of that, was very clear because she would be explaining to me all about this. So I got interested in that, and we'd visit places like Cabritz, and she would be telling me about, the ruins and what happened there. And I never knew my grandfather, but he was also a parliamentary representative, and for the whole district from 1936. And one of the big things, I'll talk a little bit about it later, was that there was a big crisis in the Wesley area, in that the owner of Londonderry Estate, Captain Stebbings, made a regulation and refused to let people pass across Londonderry and even Eden Estate and get to the sea, particularly to Craibo Bay, because Cribbo Bay was the main landing place for all the boats and so. And there was quite an issue over this. And luckily, he took notes and he left files. And all of this is the files of all of his research and work to make sure that the rights for the villagers to get to the sea, to be able to go and get on their boats, was maintained. So it was quite a big battle. I was in 1937. And what is interesting for me now, I didn't know that as a boy, but what is interesting for me now is, having inherited the files, there is the entire voters list for the village of Wesley in 1937. But you see,
Wow.
but in those days, you had to earn or own enough to qualify to vote. So if you didn't have a regular wage or some form of income to show that you had it to a certain extent, you would not be able to register to vote. So naturally, for a village that probably at that time maybe had 500 people or so, only 25 of them could qualify to vote. And in fact, I see 3 Robins here on the list.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they must be your great.
What were the names?
So the 3 Robins was Benjamin Robin, Simeon Robin.
That's my grandfather.
And Thomas Robin. And
I remember Thomas Robin.
All 3 of them, because you had to have the profession alongside, all 3 of them were carpenters. So obviously, as carpenters, they were earning enough to be able to qualify to vote.
Yeah, my grandfather used to build boats. I know him building boats.
All of that, you see? And usually when you are a carpenter, you were also a shipwright, so you could build boats as well.
Wow.
And a lot of those boats, the main landing place was Cribbo Bay, and that was how they got through. So when Mr. Captain Stebbins decided to stop them from crossing his land, which was Eden Estate, Londonderry Estate, this was a major crisis. And my grandfather, as PAL rep, he had to come and represent the people. And it was a very interesting thing, because both of them, Captain Stebbings and my grandfather, were both Englishmen. So it was 2 Englishmen fighting with each other over the rights of the villagers. But in the end, my grandfather's, he was a lawyer, but he never practiced law. He was trained in law. He was able to prove that the people had a right to walk across the land and go and beach their boats. And up to now in Dominica, you have a right up to high water mark. Any beach, any rocky area, a person has a right to have an access, even if it's walking on foot, to go down to the high water mark on the beach and to use the beach. And that law is still in Dominica. And I tell you, I keep my beady eyes open whenever I see any of these developments come, because I know that my grandfather was instrumental in that, and I don't want governments to be handing over chunks of Dominica beach land and preventing people from coming on it.
Yeah, that is very important.
I'm just giving you an example of the background, to all of this. So coming more closely now to my own involvement, what happened was, as everybody will remember, that up to 1971, there was no rural secondary school in Dominica. Everybody, if they got a scholarship, or if their parents had enough money to maintain, or if they had a relative in Roseau, they could only go to one of the 4 secondary schools that were all based in Roseau. That is the Convent High School, the St. Mary's Academy, the Wesley High School, and the Dominica Grammar School. But that was a major sacrifice for people, because you had to support your child, whoever they were staying with, in Roseau for the term. Sometimes it would come up on a weekend. People who were involved in that, who are my age and probably older, can remember those days very well. So
I
that,
remember those days. My
yes,
brothers.
and it wasn't until
Yeah.
1971 that the Portsmouth Secondary School was constructed, which enabled Portsmouth and related areas, Vacas and Peebush and so, to go to secondary school from 1971 in Portsmouth. But what happened, of course, was in 1979,
Mhm.
Hurricane David hit 29th of August and wrecked particularly the south of the island. I mean, it wrecked everywhere, but the southern part of the island was more badly damaged because the storm passed across the southern part of the island, but it seriously affected the north and northeast as well. And what it did is that it damaged numerous homes. It damaged some of the schools. And therefore, when September came, the schools could not operate. And the people who were taking care of Wesley and Marigot pupils and children, their houses were damaged, or that the families had to crowd in with them, and there just wasn't space for students coming from the Northeast. And that is when parents and the Methodist Church, particularly Reverend Gums and others, and of course the elders of the Methodist Church, devised a system whereby they could utilize the old grounds of the training
Youth
camp,
camp.
the youth, yes, the youth training camp. Now, I'll just go back on that training camp a bit because the site of the youth training camp, if I have got the title correct, was one of the 5 agricultural stations in Dominica. The British government, way back in 1940, established 5 agricultural stations to serve people within the district. Once again, we have to remember there were no roads except for those roads around Roseau. And there was a whole commission of inquiry that agriculture had to be upgraded and improved. And at the time, before 1940, it was only the Botanic Gardens in Roseau that was supplying seedlings and stuff for farmers. So it was felt that there should be more agricultural stations scattered around the island. So you had the development of the 1 mile at Portsmouth. You had Londonderry. Then you continued on down to La Plaine. You went around to Granby, to what they call the center. And then up the west coast, you had Roseau, and then you had Collyhoo. So you had these agricultural centers, and they all had staff, and they were providing you with limes, cocoa, and all those things.
Still up to this day.
Yes, well, some of them have closed, and of course, the one at Londonderry has been kind of transformed. It was handed over first to the Taiwanese when we were recognizing Taiwan, and then into mainland China. I'm not sure how effectively it operates now. But essentially, these buildings were available because by the late 1960s, 70s, the use of the agricultural center had declined. So it was smaller, it was closer down by the river. But the main area up above where St. Andrew's High School developed was basically abandoned. There was the superintendent's house on a slight hill, and the governments of the Eastern Caribbean, mainly the Windward and Leeward Islands, got together to establish a regional youth camp. So the idea was that Dominica would be the center, and the young people chosen, all of them men, young men, would come down to the youth camp and learn various skills and then go back. And
Wow.
the head of that organization the government put in place was Major Johnson. So Major Johnson was put in charge, and there were various tutors. And there were all sorts of various subjects. There was culture, and there was agriculture, and that kind of thing.
About what year? What period of time was that?
Oh, this began in 1969.
Oh.
68, 69. But what happened
And it ended
was,
when? And it ended about what time?
Oh, it ended. Hurricane David paid to it the end.
Oh, really?
So
it was up to that time. I didn't realize.
That was when the transfer happened. They were trying. It went on hard times, and the reason was that, as with a number of regional organizations, a lot of the other countries, the other islands, were not kind of putting in the amount that was agreed that every island would put into running the police. They did not put in on a regular basis the money. So the burden was on Dominica for a lot of the time. Even the United States government, USAID, provided money. Various organizations, they thought it was a great thing to provide money for the establishment of this school, which would serve the region. In fact, I remember when we started off with St. Andrews, there was still a lot of cooking equipment, big heavy-duty stoves and ovens in the place where was going to be for schoolrooms. And I remember they had cups with plastic mugs that had the USAID, USAID, and so stamped on them and all that. But basically, it was Hurricane David that put the final nail in the coffin of the school. But there was also another problem that was already happening, is that the other islands were sending young men who had got in trouble with the law. This was not the original intention. The intention was that this was going to be a vocational school where you would learn skills, you'd learn agriculture, learn this. And in Dominica, that was what it basically was. And because Major Johnson had been involved in the Voluntary Defense Force and the Cadet Corps in Roseau, he also put in the military thing. So there was marching and all that.
So where was Major Johnson from? Was he Dominican?
He was from Dominica. Yeah,
okay.
Dominica. But he had lived outside of Dominica for a while in his training and all that. But then he came back actually to be the head of the training school, of the regional training school.
Okay. I met a guy. Sorry, I met a guy some years ago in either in the US here or in Canada, and he was telling me he was from a different island, and he told me he was at a youth camp. And now it was the first time I've actually met someone from a different island at the youth camp. And then I was talking to this guy from Wesley the other day, and he was telling me some of the stuff that was going on. Quite interesting. I had no idea.
And a lot of wild stuff. And finally, I mean, it was on the shoulder of Dominica now that all these petty, you can say some of them, I wouldn't say all, but there were a lot of petty criminals from the other islands that were just being sent off, to relieve the other islands of the pressure of having these young people there. So things began to collapse. A number of buildings had been constructed. In fact, in the picture that you have, on behind you, the big hall that also served the school, that was the big dining hall for the regional youth camp. Yes.
The auditorium for assembly.
That was the auditorium, exactly. Huh. So in essence now, what happened is that with Hurricane David and the damage, it really put a real big pressure on particularly the students from the Northeast, because remember from 1971, the Portsmouth and Northwest had their school at Portsmouth Secondary, but the Northeast, and you could almost say the South, but the Northeast didn't have theirs. So the list of names, I would have to have a list in front of me, but I remember people like Arnold Telemack and, as I say, Reverend Gums and others, particularly I would say from the Methodist Church, because they were the prime movers in all of this. And the government agreed that from September of 1979, they could use the buildings that existed.
So when exactly did the schools? I know it started in October, but I'm not sure of the date. Do you? Oh, seems like we have a little technical issue here. Okay. Yeah,
you back.
Oh yeah.
But
okay.
I hope you were still hearing my voice.
No, it went quiet for a little bit. Yeah, but I was asking. I know the school started in October, but I'm not too sure of the exact date. Do you have a date?
I would have to look it up. But you see,
no problem.
The end of August was the Hurricane David. Then they had to use the whole of September to negotiate and to clean up and all of that. So as you say, it wasn't until October that they were able to open the school and also make the arrangements now for students who was going to, the students who had been in Roseau at different schools now had to be reorganized to come to this one central school. And it was also, remember, including girls as well, because you had girls that were going to the Wesley High School and a certain number to the convent, but mainly Wesley High School. And this was a major reason as to why the Methodists were so deeply involved. And they were able to open it. But then there was the other issue of teachers. How are you going to get teachers? Because remember, the teachers of the secondary schools in Roseau have to continue with the schools they have in Roseau. So they had to find a kind of new cadre of teachers. And that is when they got in touch with me.
Who got in touch with you?
Well, it was Reverend Gums, because Gums was the sort of first principal. And he was the Methodist minister for this area. So it worked out. I mean, he had to take on a double task as Methodist minister for the Northeast, but also to take on the task of being the principal and setting up the school. And you had a number of other people who were requested. I mean, the amazing Carol Valmont, she was there from the very beginning with me, and she stuck it through. And Mrs. St. John, a whole set of others that people I'm sure will remember.
Yeah, I remember Miss Rabes actually taught at St. Andrews with her while I was teaching there. How long did you teach at St. Andrews?
Well, what happened is politics comes into play, because I was quite happy. I started in October. I had a place to live because my grandmother's house was just down the road in Calibishi. I was there at a place called Point Baptiste. I had my little house there. I was well set up, and I had a transport, I had a pickup. So it was an easy matter for me every morning to come around, go up to St. Andrews.
All right. Look like we have a little slowing of the internet on the end over there. So hopefully it will come back in place pretty soon. All right, so we're just getting some information here on the history of St. Andrews, especially in the early years. And
you're back again.
Oh yeah, you're back now, right?
Yeah. So anyway, so basically I was there beginning of October going into 1980. But then 1980 was an election year. And I was already involved with politics in the Freedom Party. But I cut out from that in 1979 and I concentrated on the teaching. And then in the general election of July 1980, the Dominica Freedom Party under Eugenia Charles got into power. So Eugenia Charles said, "You're wasting your time up there." I said, "But I'm happy. I'm happy up here. I go teaching. I go and, 1 o'clock I'm down in Calibishi and, things are good." "Oh, no, you're wasting your talent and your time and all that." So she said she needed me to be head of the Government Information Service and to do things on the radio and all that. So when it came to the summer holidays of 1980, I therefore had to move. So really, I just filled a gap. I was teaching English, geography, and history, of course. English, geography.
All right, you called history last. I was wondering why he that was the first one you would call.
Yeah, well.
So how were you like as a teacher? How were you a strict teacher? How was it like being in your class? What do you think?
Well, it's difficult to judge yourself, but I certainly was not a strict teacher, because I had an uncle. I went to school. Most of my high school was in Barbados. And I had an uncle who was the deputy head of Combermere School. And whereas all the other schools still used to flog, they had a whip and they would call you up to the headmaster. And so I was flogged how many times. But this uncle of mine, he refused. He said, "I want the student who has misbehaved to understand what they are doing wrong. I don't want to just give him a few, 4 of the best or 6 of the best and send him back to the class. I want him to understand why it is." So basically, that was my thing. I never made noise or argued. I would just explain. And another thing that students have told me that they never forget is that now and then I would think, we have a historic site nearby. And if I can just with the permission of the headmaster, get my students a ride. And I remember one particular case, which some students remind me of, is that we were learning about the history of sugarcane and the plantations and all of that. So I said, down in Hatton Garden, they have a wonderful mill. Of course, it's totally damaged now. But in those days, in 1979-80, you could see all of the equipment and all of that was clearly there, and it was owned by Mr. Frobel Laville. So I said, "Mr. Laville, I'd like to take some children down there." And I got a truck. I forget, in those days, you didn't have too many of those Toyota vans. You had a big Bedford truck with seats in it that would carry bananas on Banana Day. So I would get the student in that truck. We would go down to Hatton Garden. I knew I only had 45 minutes, and show them around and make them, take a few notes and all that. And many students have told me, but I'd never forget. And the thing is, by going to the site, it's stuck in their mind.
Yeah, definitely. And while you're at that, Dr. Honeychurch, there were many. I don't know if I should say were many at this time, or at least a few of those historical artifacts in our area. I know the one right by the Laville Estate in Londonderry. There was one, a mill close to the Powell Bridge.
Yes.
And those things are just totally gone. I mean, are there any others, and how difficult, how challenging is it for us to preserve these things?
Well, the one at Londonderry is in the bush, but it still is there. The big wheel and the rollers and all of that. It's in the overgrown in the bush, and thank goodness when they were handing over the land to the construction company, Renault, I went to government and I said, there's a site in there, and if you could just keep it, don't give it over to be bulldozed or anything. If you could just keep it. We never know, in the future you may want to do something with it. So luckily, it is still there in the bush. As far as Hatton Garden is concerned, unfortunately, you had the other hurricane. You had Maria, and that was a destruction. Not much is there. Mr. Edison James tried to save some stuff, but things like the chimney and all that were blown down in the hurricane because he bought it. He bought the mill from Mr. Laville. And then there's a place up in the middle of Marigot that was called Bridgewater. And there was an old wheel and mill and all that there. I have pictures of it, but funnily enough, strangely enough, the mill and the machinery was sold to somebody in Antigua. So it was picked up and taken away.
Wow. What about there was a cannon right at the back of the hospital?
Yes.
And that disappeared. And I'm sure these things can go for quite a bit of money right now.
Yeah.
Is it somebody stole it or something? What?
No, because I'll tell you, technically, although it was in front of the hospital, the old hospital, the land up on that little section there belonged to the Dewhurst family that have land down in Sandy Bay.
Okay.
So when they were building the new hospital, they just pushed it. They bulldozed it. They pushed it. So the Dewhurst, who was developing that land, he said, well, I'll put the cannon up. And there were other cannons. There were three other.
Sorry, I didn't. So what happened to that cannon? You said
it's down below now.
Oh, they just pushed it off.
Yeah,
wow.
on the land of Middle Bay, Sand Bay. But at least it's visible. You know, they put it on a good stand and all that.
Okay, so it's on.
Yeah,
I didn't realize.
But then there were three of them over by overlooking the bay, the Marigot Bay, known historically as Halifax Bay, overlooking where the fisheries is now. And somebody, Mr. Jojo Karam, deceased, he went with a pickup and he picked it up and took it to his bar in Coconut Beach in Portsmouth.
Wow, just like that.
Just like that. Nobody cared.
And Dr. Honeychurch, just not to interject you too much, but do we have a historical preservation society in Dominica?
No, unfortunately, no, that doesn't exist, and that's one of the problems.
Wow.
In that, the sites are unregulated. But essentially, just to come back to the story of St. Andrews, I would say I got on very well with my students. Oh, another thing is that on a Friday afternoon, or sometimes it was a Wednesday, I had drawing classes. So those people from any form who were interested in, drawing and art and so, we would have maybe 40 minutes at the last period of a Friday or a Wednesday, and we would have drawing classes.
Wow.
That was a little addition, If
yeah.
you wanted
okay, go ahead. Sorry, complete that.
No, I was just saying if we wanted to come, it wasn't sort of forced.
Yeah. So I'm reading a comment from one of the students, and she said, "I have a story about Dr. Lennox Honeychurch and the school uniform. I was wearing my Dominica Grammar School skirt. He and Reverend Gums came to me, took the pattern of the skirt, of the khaki skirt. He had a." I need to connect mine.
I know what she's going to say.
Yeah, so basically she said that you'll use the pattern to come up with the uniform for St. Andrews.
Exactly, because they added, I don't know if I still have it. We added, I think it was to hold up the belt, because there was a belt. We added on both sides a strip of cloth with a button so that, it would hold the belt.
So you were involved in the uniform.
Not only that, but they call it the logo, the symbol of St. Andrews High School that you have there on your screen. I was the one that designed that.
Wow. Well, thank you, Dr. Honeychurch. I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see the A and the H. And then you have a little saint for the A and H. And then S down by the bottom. and then I put the motto of the school. I think it's Reverend Gums that composed, and the teachers.
All striving, all achieving.
That's right. They composed the motto, and then I did the rest. And actually, there was a painted sign that
in the
was
auditorium, right?
in the auditorium, but then also down by the main road
Okay, I
to
can't remember that
indicate,
one.
whatever.
Yeah. And if
And
it
that,
is on the top right above on the screen, we just modified it for our
yes,
reunion. So we added the world to show that we are all over the globe, and then we added the,
exactly. I
yeah.
see that there.
So also you have your the logo is your logo is playing
That's
part
right.
of this. Yes.
So,
Thank you.
all right, I left in the holiday time of 1980, because by that time, July Freedom Party came in. Miss Charles asked me to go and be chief of the Government Information Service and all that kind of stuff. So that I was sorry, because I really enjoyed my time there, and I could have spent all my years there, but maybe there were bigger and better things for me to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one of the best high school campus in Dominica.
yes, and then the story of it is a little tragic, because you had these Methodist groups from the United States and Canada who would come down and volunteer to help build and extend. So, for instance, you had the labs and other classrooms. The ruins are still there behind the place. But, oh, yes, I see the thing come up there with the uniform.
Yeah, I was just.
Yeah, she's quite right. The pleat. Reverend Gums came and took a pattern of my khaki skirt. He added the pleat to the front, and the yellow tops were taken from Wesley High School because of Methodist background. And that's how St. Andrews High School uniform was created.
So thanks to Aura too.
That's correct. And she added the pleat and all that. Now, the tragedy of the school was that it was a beautiful campus, and bit by bit, people were coming from the U.S. and elsewhere, and they were working during the summer months and extending the school, and there was a lot of donations and voluntary assistance and all that. So improvements were being made step by step. But then this could have continued. But then what happened in 1995, another party came in, the UWP, and they planned another airport, to go from where the agricultural station is in Woodford Hill and cut across, and the end of the airstrip would be where the St. Andrews High School is, directly over it. So you couldn't have planes landing and taking off right in the school grounds. They would have had to demolish all those buildings. So they decided to place a new school, completely new, that is Northeastern Comprehensive, on the hill. But then, lo and behold, years pass, and now the airport is in a different location. So therefore, there had been no need. But you don't know these things. You see, I mean, the government, the UWP government, in all genuine attempt to try to build an airport where only 6 houses would have to move. That plan was behind the village, so that only 6 houses had to move. But it would end on the ridge that continues along there. It would have ended in the site of St. Andrews High School. So
and the school also changed from being managed on the Methodist to government.
Government, yes, that also happened with the new school being constructed and all that. And of course, it took some time. And anyway, that's how things happen, because sometimes in the life of a country, you don't expect what something is going to be used for in the future. Then it's another use, and you realize that what you built 20 years ago does not have to be removed. But that's done, and certainly the St. Andrews High School replacement, that is the Northeast Comprehensive, is a very handsome place and cast concrete and secure and all that. I am not sure if you are hearing me, but it seems that we have been, or you have been cut off. You're back again?
All right, Dr. Honeychurch, I had some problem. Yeah, my computer shut down.
All right, well, mine remained, but I wasn't sure.
Back here, I'm not hearing loud at all.
Heard me, but
what happened?
Essentially, as I said,
you know,
can you want me to continue speaking?
I'm hearing very low. Give me a minute, please. Let me.
And your mute seems to be okay. Now,
yeah, I'm hearing you, but it's extremely low. I'm not too sure what happened. My computer shut down.
We're coming close to the end because I see 5 o'clock coming up. And your mute, your microphone shows that you're mute.
Yeah, you can hear me, right? But I'm hearing very low.
Okay, I am hearing you all right.
Yeah, it was getting so quite interesting. Yet, let me join another computer. But Dr. Honeychurch, you can continue to. Let me.
Oh, okay. Well, once you're hearing me, well, all I was going to conclude with is to say, you know, in cases of national development, these things happen because sometimes you can't foresee what is going to be developed later on. So now we have a different situation where a new alignment for the airport is being worked on. And whereas we could have continued with the site of the old St. Andrews High School next to the playing field and at a lower level, the Northeast Comprehensive, as far as buildings goes and construction and all the cast concrete and all that, it certainly is a more probably secure building. But there are one or two things I would be interested to find out. There used to be a big plantation bell hanging in the yard. I don't know where that has gone to. And then
yeah, I'm gonna try to link up on another computer here. It take me a minute.
But it's essentially what I can go ahead, or I'll wait for you.
I'm still hearing very low. Sorry, people. Trying to see if I can get an alternate link up here.
Well, I can hear you very well.
My computer is shut down.
I can hear you very well.
Oh. Yeah, I'm gonna restart. Yeah, I think my computer was not the wire was connected to the back of the computer, but it wasn't plugged in, and the
Oh
battery
my.
died. That's what happened. So it'll
Anyway,
take me
I can hear you. I can
just a
hear
few
you.
minutes to get back on, but I'm hearing really low from my phone, so I'm not hearing I'm hearing you speaking, but not exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
But,
Well,
we should be on soon again to continue. Yes,
okay.
maybe about another 5 minutes to wrap up. Very sorry about that. Okay. All right, I'm thinking back on. Yes. Sorry about this. All right, I'm back.
Okay. Well, I got a few minutes.
Sorry, people. I thought my computer's plugged into the wall. The battery was dying, and I didn't even realize, and it just shut down.
All right.
So
well,
yes,
well,
quite interesting. I didn't realize you had such all that input in the school.
Well, in the early times, but
yeah, because I was speaking with Melba Phillip.
Yes,
Melba Phillip, I remember, who told me that you taught at St. Andrews.
Yes.
I wasn't even aware.
But as I say, it was for, you could almost say, just a year or less than a year, just to help out with getting it going, because there was a crisis. It was a crisis. There were no teachers, and they had to get teachers who lived in the north and who were not occupied with schools in the south. All of these things had to be done, but that was as a result of the effects of Hurricane David. But what it did do, it forced the provision of a secondary school for the Northeast. I think it would have taken many more years if it had not been for Hurricane David, and if it had not been that the particularly members of the Methodist community and parents of other faiths felt that they had to, try to sort something out on behalf of their children. And that's the story of how it happened. And it has gone from strength to strength. I mean, it's a very recognized educational institution today. But the story of how it was formed and the emergency situation into which it gave birth is a quite remarkable story.
Yeah. So how many classes were there at the beginning, and where were most of the classes held?
Well, what happened is they had to make do with what was available left over from the regional youth training school, the youth center, the youth, whatever they called it. So there were dormitories for the youth. So those dormitories, some of them could be turned into classrooms. And the main hall could be divided up just by using chalkboards. I mean, you had to be careful because you were hearing what the other class was teaching. And so in one way or another, people made do as a result of the situation,
And Dr. Honeychurch, there was the bell. The bell was a big part of St. Andrews.
That is what I was asking about, because I went when
it disappeared.
Yeah, it disappeared. It was a very historic bell.
Oh
and we used
man.
to use it for classes and so. But I think as soon as the school moved up to Northeast Comprehensive, the bell disappeared.
So
The
so
other
what
thing
was that bell? Sorry, what was that bell used for originally?
I believe it was a plantation bell for Londonderry. For calling the workers and telling the
Okay.
workers what the time was and when you start and when you stop and that kind of thing. So I remember exactly where it was. I went to look for it, but it had
Yeah,
gone.
I went to look for it when I was it was long gone. I heard it was long gone.
And there was another thing I was a little sorry about that I think was bulldozed. There was a very good brass plaque giving the details of the groups who had come down to help, the Methodist groups from North America who had come
A
down
plaque,
to,
and where was that plaque?
the plaque was on one of the buildings that had been constructed by them. I can only describe it that when you come in and you're looking at the bell and also the hall, the auditorium is on your right, on your left,
Uh-huh.
and this building, which was a new concrete building, was on your right. And on the wall, on that right-hand building, was this really strong plaque.
How big was it? Because I that one not ringing is
Oh,
some.
it wasn't a huge plaque.
It wasn't huge.
It
So
was probably 15 inches by 12 or something like that.
okay. So I think
Yeah.
I maybe saw a picture somewhere. I have to maybe try to locate that.
Because
Was
I
it,
was even it wasn't I was
was
even
it
thinking of maybe taking it if it could be taken down, but it was riveted into the concrete.
was
And
it
then
on the laboratory? Was it on the lab?
on one of the labs because
I
it was
think yeah.
the group had come
Oh
down
yeah,
to
somebody. So yeah, Carol is listening. Carol Vam was listening. She said on the lab. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it was to commemorate the group, and I thought, well, if it could be saved, it could still be put up by the what you call it, Northeast Comprehensive, just as a record that this contribution had been made, because in a way it
Yeah.
almost felt like the people had made all this effort and collected all this money and nothing, it disappeared.
Yeah, a lot of the records from St. Andrews actually moved to the Methodist Church. So even
Right,
when you have to get your high school record, you go to the Methodist Church. So they have
right,
So
right.
we
Because
don't.
it's a whole different,
Yeah.
as you pointed out earlier, it is a whole different section of management. Now it's
Yeah.
under government. But anyway, that's a saga in itself. And of course, I just touched the tip of the iceberg. Wesley has the
I
whole
know.
business of landholding in Wesley and the way in which the old estate was cut up and who the owners were of the estate, Eden and Londonderry. You see, they link together along the ravine there, Priest Gutter. And Mr. He was a Leatham. Charles Leatham, he was considered to be the sugar king of the island at the time. He was the one that began selling lots for sale. But there are a few interesting cases. The part of Wesley that you call Baptiste is after a man named Baptiste, and he was a freed slave. He had been a slave.
Wow.
And he had enough money to buy land when the British were cutting up the land. So that is why it's on the old maps of Dominica. It says a free Negro, Baptiste.
Interesting.
And that's the Baptiste. And then down in the valley near Walker's Rest, you have the Burnetts. And there were some other guys who had gone to fight in the First World War. And they came back alive. Unlike some of them who died in places like Palestine and Egypt and all that, they came back, and the British government gave them a piece of land, like in gratitude for their service. So there are portions of Wesley that are part of that as well.
I remember this guy, Plenderleaf, Wallace Plenderleaf. I think he was one. I don't know. I guess in World War II.
World
But
War
I
II
think
was
Yeah, but they got land too up in the Melbourne area, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Plenderleith served in the war, and yeah, he used to tell me about it. I used to talk to him. But as I say, my grandfather's list there, I'll just run through, not the first names, but we have a couple Abrahams, Bertrands, Burnett. These are surnames, Christopher, Ducre, Henry. Well, I know James Henry and Jerusha Henry were the parents of Elford Henry. They worked in the estate, so they would have had money to qualify to vote. There's a Joseph.
So that's the list of voters.
Voters, yes.
Okay.
In 1937.
Huh.
Yes, and you have Lawrence, Lewis, of course, and Mills, a couple Phillips, Powell. We have Powell. Maybe that's related to the district that is going to disappear. They call Paul Pa area, because I see a shopkeeper there, a woman, Amanda Powell. She was a shopkeeper. And there's a Prosper, and then the three Robins that I mentioned, and Smith and Stedman. Most of them are skilled people. They're masons, carpenters, tailor, chauffeur, overseer. These are the kind of jobs they had, so they could qualify to vote. Wow.
Yeah. That's amazing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, in 1951, you had what they call universal suffrage. So from 1951, anybody over the age of 21 in Dominica could vote. You didn't have those qualifications you had to have before. You didn't have to earn or own a particular amount of money to qualify to vote after 1951.
Wow, that's interesting. And people are that privileged now, and they didn't. I mean, when you get it so easy,
that's a whole current story now. I see another Powell here. He is Nathaniel Powell, and he was a bailiff. So naturally, he would have a steady income.
So our catchment area for St. Andrews was from the Kalinago territory to Kalibishi. So do you have any information about? I know we have you have extensive knowledge on the Kalinago. In fact, you have a recent book on there. But so starting from Kalibishi, why is the people from Kalibishi and Woodford Hill, why that difference between Wesley and Marigot?
well, the thing is that they were talking about the Northeast, and we must understand that in 1974, when we got the size of the constituencies changed. So in 1951, you had Dominica was divided into 8 constituencies. So the Northeast was very wide. The Northeast went all the way from Pigwa River right across, including Kalibishi, up into Hampstead. That was one constituency. Then it was changed to 11. And then in 1974, it was cut up into 21. So that is when you had the constituency was Marigot with the boundary at the Londonderry River. And then you had the Wesley constituency, which went to Kalibishi, but then there was a little commerce going on there where there was a bit of gerrymandering, as they call it. They took Kalibishi away and they put it with Peebush.
Yeah, I remember that, because Kalibishi and Wesley, Woodford Hill used to be under the same constituency in the early 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing was that Rosie Douglas was going to run for that Peebush Kalibishi constituency. And it was against Jenna Armour. And they knew that armor was popular in places like Peebush and Bence, and to a certain extent Calabishi. So they chopped it off at the Hodges River, and they put it with Peebush and all, and naturally Armour won and Rosie Douglas lost. So you see how this stuff goes.
Politics.
Yes. But in terms of the watershed for the school, it made sense because Bence and Peebush and the others, they would be going to the Portsmouth Secondary that had already been established since 1971. So really, in 1979, they then decided, okay, Calabishi to the territory. And then what happened when the Casa Bruce Secondary School was established, half of the territory that was closer to Casa Bruce, their students go to Casa Bruce. So you have that difference of it.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of changes over the years. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you, how important it is for us to document and learn about our history.
Well, the thing is, it's really lessons. I never say history. History is really about the present. History is explaining to you why we are where we are, right? So you have to go back a bit. But I find that very often people who are teaching history, they start down in the back at the beginning. And they don't question or introduce the students to the present. Why are we here, all our different ethnic groups? Why are we on the pieces of land that we are? Because, you know, initially the Kalinago people were all down on Woodford Hill Beach, and they had everywhere, wherever they wanted. And then when the British came, they sent out surveyors and they chopped up the land, and they restricted the Kalinago people to way down in the rocky ravines of where Salibia and Sensi and Seneco and all these places are. So you then have to wonder, well, how did landholding take place? Then you have to say, well, what happened? You talk about slavery. What happened when slavery was over? Then you have your, what they call post-emancipation villages. And why are so many people in Marigot and Wesley from the Leeward Islands? Why their ancestors are from the Leeward Islands? Antigua, St. Kitts, Montserrat. That's because Dominica at one time was a member of the Leeward Islands, and our headquarters was in St. John's, Antigua. And therefore, if you wanted work and you heard work, there was work in Dominica, you just hop on a schooner, sail into Portsmouth and jump on a lorry and get into Wesley or Woodford Hill or Marigot, you know. And that is why you have your Methodist church and your Methodist congregation, because they were coming from the Protestant islands of Antigua, St. Kitts, and Montserrat. And so one thing leads to another. So it just basically explains how you are, why you are, where you are, right? And it's a process that has been going on for years. Because as I said, you have the cutting up of plots for sale for people who used to work on Eden Estate, on Londonderry Estate, Temple, Woodford Hill. And then bit by bit, they were able to get their little 10 shillings and get a piece of land and establish themselves. And it was always on the edge of the estate. So Wesley is really on the edge of Londonderry and the edge of Eden. Yeah. And Eden was not to do with Eden in the Bible. Eden was the family name of the English people who owned the place.
Yeah, the names are interesting because sometimes we say Eden Road, we say Powell Park, Powell Road.
Yes.
In fact, one listener is saying that there was a lady by the name of Ma Powell that used to live like right next to them, and I think they were she was their family and so on.
Well, yes, here
was West. But I know you also talk about Marigot. Marigot was called Wares.
Wares, yes.
I heard the other day was.
Yeah, that was what they used to refer to Marigot as, wares. People in wares, those wares people, they were worried about them coming and taking over part of the Kalinago territory and all that, you know. They used to refer to it as wares because the estate was known as Wares. When we talk about Wares Flat, that's because of the Englishman John Wares that had his estate there.
Oh, there was
And
an
then,
estate at West.
yeah,
Ah,
it's only after slavery it was chopped up and then came onto the, and you know, part of it they call it mulatto tongue, mulatto tongue with the light skin section, you know,
ah.
that kind
I,
of thing. Yeah,
I heard about mulatto tongue. I didn't realize it was, yeah. All these
that's right.
names, you know, they stem from
Yeah.
some going back to the.
So yeah, all those things have a source. But coming back to the Ma Powell, here on the list you have one of the rare women. Well, you didn't have many women voters. There is Amanda Powell, and she's a
Amanda Powell. I was a
shopkeeper, and she's a registered voter in 1937. So you can well see that.
So it was mainly men that will register to vote.
Yeah, because the women would not necessarily have a salary or a piece of land to qualify them to vote. That is why my grandmother was able to be a parliamentary representative, because she had land and she had income. So there was hardly anybody else that could qualify to be a representative, because you needed that kind of backing, you know. All of that changed in 1951. So the changes that happened in 1951 meant that the representatives also changed. So the representative for Wesley and Marigot after 1951 was Lionel Laville. Yeah? And then after
is that Lionel Laville? Sorry, is that the owner of the estate?
No, the owner of the estate was Frobel.
Oh yes.
But Frobel was the brother of Lionel.
Okay.
These are people that came from Atkinson, right? The Lavilles originally were from Atkinson.
I see.
And then after Lionel Laville, you had Stevens, the great W.S. Stevens, Wills Strathmore Stevens. And he was, of course, representing the Dominica Labour Party, which was founded in 1955. And so it continued from there. Anyway, I think we have covered.
Yeah, we covered quite a bit. Yeah. So, someone is suggesting here that you can dig at the home to find the things from the shop from many years ago.
Well, I was thinking of doing that. I even went to government, but the bulldozers and the trucks were going so fast that I really, you know, I was in a danger, and they wanted to get it.
Yeah, I think that one we're talking this. You know where Tilson live. You know Mr. Tilson.
Yes,
shop?
yes.
I think it's in that area. So that area is not affected by the airport. So I don't know how many of these things will have still be in the ground there.
Well, they told me that only when the runway is going to be done can I go in and look. I told them, well, I'll need an ID, because I did go in the early days, and then a Chinese came and asked me, what am I doing there? So I explained, and I must say he was very understanding. He knew about those kind of things. But long before the airport, I did studies all down along the coast. That is Sophia Bay, Walker's Rest, Rough Bay, Craibo, all these areas. And I found, you know, clay pieces from the Kalinago times. So we do know that the Kalinagos occupied that area, you know.
Okay.
So anyway, my friend,
quite interesting, Doc. I know we could go on forever, but I know you also have some recent book. By the way, how many books have you published so far?
I think it's about 8 now, because I have the Dominica story. I have those textbooks for Caribbean schools. I have books about the Cabrits, books about the culture of Dominica. I have one on the Maroons, the runaway slaves of Dominica, and then I have this one on the Kalinago territory. But don't forget that when you're talking about St. Andrews High School, I was only there for that first year, and there are people, dedicated people like Carol, who I'm always amazed at the way she dedicated those years to both St. Andrews and to Northeast Comprehensive, and the other people, St. John and
Arlington Burnett,
teacher Joseph and Burnett and all these others
yeah,
that would know much more about the later part after I left in the summer holidays, the long holidays of 1980.
Yeah, and Carol is actually listening to us right now. She's on.
Okay. Well, yeah. Greetings to her. Greetings to her. And then you're going on into so the whole of the 80s.
Yeah. So Dr. Honeychurch, I really want to thank you. You are an extremely important man on the island of Dominica, not just Dominica alone, in the Caribbean, and I'm just amazed at your passion and your drive, that how you continue to even in recent time that you just have this book that coming out, right? And
well, I think it's just interesting.
It's out already. Go ahead.
It's out already. Yes, you can get it. You can get it at Jay's bookstore or in the old market there. There's a place called Zeb Quayle that you can get it. So and it tells you about the whole business to do with the Kalinago territory and the chiefs and the PAL reps and the present president of Dominica and the first female chief and all these things. So I think we will leave it there.
Yeah, and it's on the screen right now. So I want to really thank you for coming out here and educating us. And we always fascinated by those the history, looking back, and we can learn a lot from looking back. And I wish our people at home would be more mindful in preserving some of these things, and they can be used for attractions, not just for ourselves, but also like tourist attraction. So some of the old mill at the Powell Bridge and the one at Laville Estate, I wish those things were in a condition where people made us accessible, where we and Wesley and in Marigot and those areas could use those things as to educate the people that come after. I mean, I'm bringing on my children to Dominica, and I wish those places were in better condition. I could take them and explain. So I'll still try to get to them, but I know the condition in which they are right now, it might be difficult to show much, because even when the one at Powell Bridge, I when I was there last year, it was like most of what I used to see, I just see that like one little part of the whole. It's like everything just corroded.
It's totally overgrown.
And it's just overgrown. Okay.
Yes, and that is on of course Eden Armour's land. Yeah, and then there was a canal that led down to turn the previous mill. There was a previous mill that was a water mill, but that now has all been dug up and covered by the new conduit for the drainage of the airport. So that whole canal has gone. You know?
Yeah.
But
yeah, so
really. So anyway, we'll stop there. It's getting dark by me now.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Honeychurch.
All right.
I really, really appreciate you and the work you
all the best to those.
You are really a national hero. And
all the best to those who
really appreciate you. And thanks everyone for listening and interacting with us here. And don't forget, this it's just leading up to the St. Andrews reunion, which will take place from July 6th to 12th. We have several activities. We have the opening ceremony, and then we'll have a meet and greet. Then we have a community day. Then we have the health outreach, the sports day, the banquet, and at the Continental Hotel in Portsmouth, former Kipinski Hotel, and then we have the cookout and the talent extravaganza, and culminating at the end of that. So looking forward, you see all the rich history that we have. Looking forward to see everyone there at the reunion. So and Dr. Honeychurch, you're part of it too. So we're expecting to have you here, and you maybe can give us some more information also. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and have a blessed rest of the day. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see you there. Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see you there. Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see you there. Get ready, be ready, stay ready for the Grand Reunion 2025. St. Andrews High School alumni, stay locked in for plans, interviews, and events. Save the date, July 6th to 12th, 2025. Be counted and see you there.